On May 3rd, a 13-year-old boy stormed into his school with his father's 2 guns and a hit list and killed 8 classmates.
It was Serbia's first mass school shooting.
What could possibly motivate a 13-year-old to murder 10 people? Taking his father's rifle, Kosta Kekmanovic went to his school in May 2023. In that location, he fired at security officers, teachers, and students. Another shooting occurred near Belgrade a day after the school shooting. Was there a link between the 2 incidents? What possible circumstances could have brought a 13-year-old to this awful situation? And where is he right now? The horrific story of the 2023 Serbian school shooting is presented here. This case occurs in a nation named Serbia. Serbs have been in Europe for a very long time. They first arrived in the Balkans or Eastern Europe in the 5th century. The Serbian Empire was rather large throughout the Middle Ages before being absorbed by the Ottoman Empire, which was considerably larger. Therefore, Serbia did not become Serbia until the 1990s, when Yugoslavia broke up. It had existed for a long time. However, the Yugoslavian wars left a lasting scar on Serbian culture. That is still visible today, and is even connected to the story being told today. After World War I, Serbia, Croatia, and Slovenia united to form Yugoslavia, a stronger sovereign state against adversaries like the Ottoman Empire and the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia was created after the end of World War II, when more nations entered the area and communist regimes assumed control. It was at that point that everything started to go south. Extreme poverty was prevalent, nationalism was growing, and animosity between the nations of the former Yugoslavia had begun. One of history's deadliest wars raged in the Balkans during the 1990s. There was a normalization of war crimes and genocide. Soldiers were required to engage in combat with their own moms or sisters. The situation worsens to the point that I won't even describe the rest. The government reluctantly consented to a truce, and the UN intervened, and one by one, nations declared their independence, including Slovenia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Macedonia, Croatia, and so on. All save Serbia, which persisted in its battle to seize control of Bosnia and Herzegovina, the region's most ethnically diverse nation. Even worse was the war in Bosnia. Over 2 million people were displaced. 100,000 people lost their lives, and 50,000 Bosniak women were violated by Serb forces. Following World War II, it was the most destructive conflict in Europe, and numerous generals were convicted for war crimes and genocide. However, as you might expect, the trauma is far from done. Imagine living in a nation with such a tragic recent past. There's a good chance that the war touched or affected your family in some manner. Peace didn't arrive until 1995. The majority of Serbians still recall these terrible years. In view of this, let's fast forward to May 2023. On May 3rd, 2023 at about 8:30 a.m., multiple disturbing calls were made to Belgrade's emergency services. People were yelling, crying, and begging with the dispatchers to send police to a nearby school as soon as they could. Someone had opened fire on the primary school students at the Vladislav Ribnikar Primary School. It was your worst nightmare because nothing could be done to stop the gunman, because everything occurred so quickly. He approached the security guard as soon as he entered the school. He shot the guard in the chest as he attempted to be tackled to the ground and stripped of his weapon. Then he opened fire on 3 girls in the corridor. Finally, he stormed into a history class and shot the teacher. He then opened fire on the students, killing a number of them and wounding many more. Students were screaming, laying in pools of blood, or urgently crawling to try and save their lives by the time police arrived 12 minutes later. They were all under the age of 12. Kosta Kekmanovic, the shooter, was just 13 years old. He attended the school as well.
On May 3rd, a 13-year-old boy, a student, went on a rampage at his school in the capital, Belgrade, killing 8 students and a school guard.
Police detained him. They took away a Ruger .22 pistol and a CZ-75 Shadow 2. Additionally, he carried Molotov cocktails. The gunman called them from the schoolyard when he noticed them. According to the chief of the Belgrade police, "I am a psychopath and I need to calm down," Costa said. Sheesh. Who at the age of 13 says this? The paramedics' difficult duty of evaluating the situation was heartbreaking. The history teacher and 7 students all have critical injuries. Dragan Vahovic, the school security guard, as well as 7 girls and 1 boy had died. Another unsettling piece of news surfaced on May 15th. After 2 weeks of survival efforts, the girl passed away in the hospital. Other students and the history teacher had been shot in the stomach, arms, and legs. Despite urgent surgery and all intensive care treatment undertaken, the patient who suffered serious head injuries in the shooting in the school died. The statement read, "Imagine the healing that would follow. Even children who were not hit by the gunfire suffered lifelong scars." Costa's terror reign might have ended, but the case had just recently begun for many others. Families of the victims demanded explanations. Which boy was this? Why had he carried out this horrifying massacre? The shooter's identity, including his name and face, was kept secret from the moment of his arrest since he was a kid. Only his initials, KK, were disclosed by the Serbian authorities. The only thing the officers could make out was a young man in all black being led to a police vehicle while wearing a hat. Nothing more than conjecture followed. A significant hint did, however, surface. They assert that he engaged in a shooting rampage at the elementary school using his father's legally owned firearms. According to the police, the youngster had a list of targets in the building, as well as targets for killing. Costa hadn't just stolen his father's firearms from his father's house. He and his father had previously bonded through utilizing the weapons. They reportedly spent a lot of time together at shooting ranges before the actual incident. Take what you will from that. The gunman was not in jail, shocking and infuriating the traumatized community. In Serbia, if you are under the age of 14, you are not considered to be of legal age of criminal responsibility. Fair enough. Serbia had no idea someone so young would do such awful acts. Look at the United States or Japan, for example, of countries where the legislation has changed following an incident like this. Costa was taken to a clinic in Belgrade for mental treatment as per a court order. Only until the hospital deems him healthy enough, he will be allowed to be free. His parents were detained in the meantime. As lawsuits were filed against them, both parents soon found themselves in legal trouble. The mother is accused of child maltreatment, while the father is accused of crimes that endanger public safety. The big questions, however, were still unsolved. What was the reason for this murderous act? He got the gun somehow. On May 3rd, during a brief break for all students, Costa carried out his horrifying, well-planned attack. In Serbia, May 1st is Labor Day, thus classes have been cancelled for 2 days. Costa was ready on Wednesday since he had planned who, when, and where he would shoot during the long weekend. Costa was a great student, which is another intriguing fact about him. Typically, you don't hear anything like this regarding school shooters. And based on media sources, it appears that the kid in issue was a gifted student who had excelled in history, mathematics, and other subjects. No one at the school had anticipated that he would turn out to be the shooter. He had never expressed anger or displayed symptoms of sadness or anxiety. He was among the most ambitious students that the school had ever encountered. One of Costa's classmates remarked, "I wasn't expecting this to happen. He was a quiet guy, and he looked decent. He had outstanding marks, but we didn't know much about him. And this elementary school was among Belgrade's best. Therefore, this exclusive school in this opulent neighborhood was the last location where anyone expected a school shooting to occur." Another issue is that nobody in Serbia actually anticipates school shooting. In actuality, few nations do outside the United States. They hardly exist in Europe. The events the next day were all the more surprising because of it. It was May 4th, 2023, one day after Costa shot and killed his classmates. The nation was in grief. Others were demonstrating on the streets, chanting, "Enough gun violence." Another shocking piece of information that made its way to countrywide on TV, a man got into a confrontation with 2 other males just one day after the school massacre. Then as things heated up, he drew a pistol. He then started firing at everyone he saw as he drove through the streets of his town. He left the area as residents began phoning the emergency services. He was taken into prison following a protracted manhunt 8 hours later. Once more, the reason was a mystery. According to witness testimony, the man appeared to have serious mental health concerns and erupted into wrath following a small altercation. Ironically, this individual also used his father's pistol to carry out a mass murder. It is difficult to fathom how Serbians felt. The first mass shooting took place on that first National Dawn Day. Imagine the astonishment, perplexity, and terror you experience in situations like these. People began to believe that a mass shooting could occur at any moment, any place. Was there another assassination plot afoot that day or the next? Was this how things were going to carry on from here? People then started to walk in the streets. Tens of thousands of people demonstrated in the nation's capital and other cities, demanding the resignation of top leaders and the implementation of a ban on violent television programming. A sobering reality is this. After the United States and Yemen, Serbia has the highest rate of gun ownership in the world, and the highest rate in all of Europe. That small survey found that there are more than 39 firearms per 100 people. This is a huge deal. The lives of so many people were always in danger, as well as those of the families in preparation for the worst. They purchased firearms. They still own these firearms in their residence now. Additionally, some families are pleased to own them. Like in the case of Costa. Costa's murder list was taken away by the chief of police in Belgrade, and the mere sight of it made him feel nauseous. The drawing looks like something out of a video game or a horror movie, which shows that he carefully considered which classes to liquidate. Costa's father first denied giving his son access to any of his firearms when the police first questioned him about it. He stated that he kept them locked up in a safe that required a code. But it was later discovered that Costa knew the code by heart. Costa had long been urged to use the weapons, which reinforced the public's worst suspicions. The fact that shootings were so uncommon would indicate that Serbian rules weren't extremely severe. Prior to Costa's massacre, a war veteran shot and killed 14 people in a town in central Serbia in 2013. People now genuinely wanted to see a change. New gun sales are currently prohibited for 2 years. Gun owners must also consent to a psychiatric and background screening in person. While it is unknown what Costa's early years were like, the second gunman had a long history of violent crime. He shouldn't have been permitted to have one with him. Additionally, nowadays, unlawful gun ownership carries a maximum 15-year jail sentence. Then something else occurred. In Serbia, people started willingly surrendering their firearms. Just in May, 70,000 weapons were turned in. Sad that such a horrible and deadly event had to bring about such an enormous change. Serbia appears to be moving in the right direction after the 2 tragic killings, with many individuals giving up their guns and others promising a more peaceful future.
Tens of thousands demanded not just tighter gun controls, but a reorientation of society away from violence.
I think a lot of us have just had enough.
What do you think when you see all of this?
I see life saved, he said.
One of the most glaring legacies of the Yugoslav and Bosnian wars is the country's continued severe division. After all, the shooting industry in Serbia is flourishing. With so many firearms, there are an equal number of establishments and policies that encourage individuals to use them, only for financial benefit. Guns are always used in mass shootings because they make it far simpler to kill many people at once than, say, a knife. The 2023 Belgrade school shooting victims serve as a somber reminder of the need for increased gun safety. Don't allow your kids to play with them, maybe. The Serbian population won't be able to move on from the 2 killings for a very long time. It immediately affects hundreds of individuals, including friends, classmates, and relatives of the victims. The tragic day also left 1,000 primary school students permanently scarred. Costa's actions are terrible to behold at any age, much less at the age of 10. And millions more continue to be in disbelief that something so heinous and horrifying can occur twice in a succession in a nation where so many people think the violent times are behind them. Maybe they truly are behind with the new firearms regulations. I appreciate you folks watching. What are your options on this case? Do you also know of any more stories that are similar? Please let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and press the bell before you go. Okay, see you next time.